The second mark of legacy giving is it follows a sowing and reaping principle. This is a principle that you aren't going to hear, again, out in financial consulting and advisor. I mean, maybe some do this, but if they do, they're probably inherently Christians who are teaching the Bible and living in these principles. But here's a uniquely Christian principle having to do with how to handle and take care of our own wealth and giving and generosity. Legacy generosity follows a sowing and reaping principle. Remember this. A farmer who plants only a few seeds will get a small crop. But the one who plants generously will get a generous crop. Sowing and reaping. I grew up in an era in a home that was used and abused by televangelists on television. And they took this principle here and absolutely destroyed lives with it. And in my home, we experienced that, the destruction of our lives financially, because it was used to kind of propagate a sacred get-rich-quick scheme. And so many people who I know and love and we know and love have fallen for it. But really, this should be taught as a farming imagery, as a metaphor that farmers would understand. And if you understand how this works, it gives you a better grasp of the way God expects this to happen. Planting seed always leads to a harvest. Planting seed, if I seed the ground, if I take that and I sow those seeds into the soil, the rich soil, I can count on this. There will be a harvest. The variable is how much seed have I planted. That's the variable. That variable determines how big the harvest. And in this metaphor here, Paul is teaching here, the church at Corinth, that planting seed is giving money. And that generous planting means generous giving. Now, the spiritual law of sowing and reaping is important to grasp and vital for us if we want to grow in legacy generosity. Because generous giving isn't just random. I want you to pay attention to a farmer. The farmer doesn't occasionally, every couple of months, go, I know what I need to do. I cannot believe I let this happen. I got to plant some seeds. Scoop up a handful, kind of prance around the farm and plant some seed. Is that how you would plant? I wouldn't plant like that. This is I don't know who's planting like this. That's not how the farmer does it. The farmer is methodical. The farmer plants that seed purposefully, intentionally, in an ongoing way, as much planting and as much seeding as they could possibly fit in that season. Generous giving isn't random on occasion. It's intentional, ongoing seed planting. More planting leads to more harvest. In other words, the more you plant, the more you harvest. It's a farming principle that Paul is trying to teach the church to say, with your wealth, with your finances, with your income, that which I have given you, there's a principle that you should adopt, and that is a farming principle of sowing and reaping. The more you sow, the more harvest you reap. Now, some of you, let me do a quick survey. How many of you along the path of your faith have discovered that this is a real principle that is worked for you? Would you raise your hand that the more you have given, you've discovered the more I get? It's counterintuitive, right? It's counterintuitive. It's countercultural. It's an upside-down kingdom that Jesus teaches us. So, the size of your current harvest is another way to look at it, logically, metaphorically. The size of your harvest reflects the volume of seeds that you're currently planting. The size of your harvest represents and reflects the volume of seeds that you currently... In other words, our weak harvest does not mean we should keep more seeds. Right? Think of this. If a farmer has a weak harvest, they don't cut back on how much planting they do to say, ooh, we might run out. Look at this weak harvest. We better hold back. We better protect. We better hide. We better stow away. We better fill our barns with seed because this harvest, in fact, it's the opposite. The weak harvest leads to more giving, more planting, more sowing. Our weak harvest does not mean that we should keep more seeds. For a better season, it means rather that we plant more seeds. We give more to see the harvest increase. For God is the one who provides seed for the farmer. And then bread to eat. In the same way, he will provide an increase and increase your resources and the produce and then produce a great harvest of generosity in you. God is providing the seed. The more seed you use, the more seed he gives you. This is what people who are growing in their faith, many of them have discovered. That God is essentially saying, when I give you more seed, it's to increase your harvest and to produce a great harvest of generosity in you. You have more to give. So the farmer has to overcome a few things. The farmer has to overcome their main fear. Their main fear that says, I can't plant more seed because I might run out. And what is God saying? No, you won't run out because the more you give, the more I provide for you. And God says, the more seed you sow, the more I'm going to bring to you, the more I'm going to provide. My planters will always have enough to give. If you belong to me and you're one of my planters, you'll always have enough seed to give. But we fear, right? We fear that if we give too much seed, we're going to run out of seed. And God will generously provide all you need. This always goes back to God providing. You don't have to fear. God will provide. Then you will always have everything you need and plenty left over to share with others. He meets your need, and then the harvest allows you to contribute to a need somewhere else. And God is saying, do you trust me with that seed? Do you trust me? I promise I'm going to supply for you generously so you can continue to bless other people. And by blessing, you may not be giving a lot. You may be given a little, but you're giving nonetheless, expressing your trust. There's also a main frustration that a farmer would experience too, not just the fear that they're going to run out of seed, but also the frustration that I'm expecting to reap an abundant harvest after I have planted sparingly. Imagine the frustration of a farmer who puts down 100 seeds and is so mad that he didn't get 500 trees. You're kind of like, I don't know if you should keep farming, right? Now, at the same time, there are people like us who belong to God's church and we live by God's practices and principles who don't practice sowing and reaping and are shocked that we have limited sparing and we don't have an abundant harvest. And I wonder if that frustration is because we are not clear on the principle of sowing and reaping. That our size of our harvest is directly related to the abundance of our planting. And therefore, we shouldn't be shocked that we're not experiencing the benefits of God's principle on the harvest when we're not practicing the principle on the farming, on the sowing, and on the planting. So someone who says, I expect to receive an abundant harvest from God, even when I'm not practicing God's sowing and reaping principle. In other words, this is maybe one way we can all kind of relate to this. I kind of live this cycle over and over and over again every year. I overeat. Imagine you overeat every day, but you go to the gym once a week. And then you're mortified when you're on the scale that you're heavier than you were and you don't seem to be registering any muscle mass increase. But I keep doing it. I keep overeating, go to the gym once a week. Go to the gym once a week, overeat. It really isn't reasonable to be shocked that I'm gaining weight and losing muscle. Why? Because I'm not practicing the principle. God has designed a principle, and when I follow that principle, I see success. And this is in the same area of our own generosity. This practice that I described with the overeating and the once a week being active at the gym, this practice doesn't follow the basic health and fitness principles that God has set up for our own flourishing, our own human body. Also, I think there are farmers who would struggle with one main failure, and that is that I never have enough harvest because I never really plant enough seed. I never have enough harvest because I never plant enough seed. And God's giving seed is the intentional, ongoing giving of our wealth. And in the Old Testament, God said, here, I'm going to help you learn how to do this. I'm going to call this giving principle a tithe, where you take a percentage of what you've earned, called the first fruits, at 10%, and set it aside before you do anything. I'm going to give you 100%, but I'm going to help you learn to live on 90%. And then that 10% is going to get set aside to be planting seeds on a regular basis. I plant 10%. And it's not a personal, sanctified prosperity scheme. It's God's provision to fund the building of his kingdom. And that's one simple minimum guideline that he provides for us in the Old Testament that helps the people that belong to him learn to consistently plant those seeds. So prayerfully, this is what we do. We approach God about building a reoccurring planting, giving percentage into our budget. To practice this principle, right? To actually implement this principle. God, help me to start with the ongoing, reoccurring planting, a giving percentage that's built right into my budget before everything else, right? The first fruits, a farming term. And among the North Central Church family, we've tried to make this as simple as possible. If you participate in the generosity of belonging to Jesus among our church family, we try to make this possible to say, make this simple by saying all of the giving buckets we've categorized, God's kingdom buckets we've categorized as kingdom building. And we've got another bucket called tithing. Tithing would be the seed planting, and kingdom building giving would be an offering above and beyond. To try to make it simple enough to try to picture, how do I participate? How do I contribute? To allow you to sow consistently. Choose a percentage to sow every month rather than giving leftovers. Track how God is providing in ways that surprise you or redirects your priorities. Recently, someone told me that they were really struggling to make ends meet, and that their spouse was desperate for a new job to help make ends meet. And they said, it seems like that job was a job that was awarded to my spouse by merit, but little do they know I was praying all along that God would provide a new source of income. And while we were struggling to make ends meet, I was faced with a temptation: no more ongoing, reoccurring tithing giving. Can't do that. Can't make it work. But I overcame that temptation to stop tithing, and seeing now God provide a new job, which we would consider a new financial harvest. God can be put with his own principles. You can trust that he follows his own plans and his own principles.